You know, when I started my company in February, I didn't think I'd hit quite as big of a nerve here in the online community space. My name is Samantha Venia Logan, and if you're joining me, welcome from CMX. If you're not joining me from CMX, welcome to my YouTube channel. This video was actually produced for CMX. We'll talk a little bit more about them a little bit further on in the video. I would like to take a little bit of time to discuss what incredible, powerful development we have really seen in the online community space. We are learning how to create powerful, productive cultures specifically for businesses in the modern world. We now have an industry that is capable of teaching, community that is interested in learning, economic influences that are interested in playing the game with us, ad-based networks, we have Web3, we have institutional infrastructure. We are being taken seriously now. Socially Constructed Online, the company and the YouTube channel that I run, is all about applying social science to community. So I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes talking about how we can apply social science to answering that singular question. If you're interested in hearing more about any of these topics, be sure to hop down into the YouTube channel right here so that you can get a full hour conversation on the 5 foundational social scientific topics that you need to know for your community. So let's get started. We got a lot of ground to cover. We only got a little bit of time to do it. So social scientific process is going to be the first thing that we need to do. In order for us to really have a discussion social scientifically about what it means for us to build our community spaces, we need to break down and understand what the social scientific process actually is. And then once we have a good understanding of that, we're going to break down a few models that will fall within that scientific process. The socio-ecological model, which is going to be a really important understanding of how user scope works. Communication constitutes organizations theory, which is going to be one of the most critical theories that you need to know as a brand developer or as a DevOps in online communities, because this is how companies and institutions are going to be interfacing with your community. Then we're going to be covering a decision-making problem set called the wicked problems mindset, which is going to be used to help you interface the scopes of your various communities with the organizations that are going to be interacting with them. But before we can get started with that at all, hit a pause here. We need to talk about what community is, because if we're going to be talking about what community is at CMX, where all of the big players have different definitions, Jono's definition is different from Carrie's, which is different from Erica's, which is different from Richard's. Anthropologically, there is a specific definition for community, and it is a unit of culture. Culture is the set of shared attitudes, values, goals, experiences, practices, and artifacts that characterize a defined group of people. Community is a social scientific entity. It is a unit of culture, and as such, we need to be measuring it social scientifically. We're going to take you back to your 6th grade year with the scientific method. You make an observation and you ask a question. You make an assumption about that question. What is going to happen if I'm right? What happens if I'm wrong? And then you run an experiment that is based on a key set of variables. This is the scientific method. The scientific method is not sufficient to study culture. And that is why the social scientific process was put into place. We modified the scientific method to create a stronger sense or a stronger understanding of the spaces in which we are. We did that using 4 main techniques that resulted in 6 major differences between the scientific method and the social scientific process. First, radical bias. Instead of trying to create a lack of bias in our studies or in our understandings, we are laser focused with the way that we make our observations. We use field journals and we have discussions with people about who they are before we interview them about their opinions or what they do. We accept that bias is going to be a part of the problems. It's going to be a part of your community. And what this allows us to do is create a longitudinal study that isn't just about results and phases. Experiment 1, result stage, research, experiment 2. Instead, we've made it possible to run the same experiment benchmarking against data we've collected in the past. We've also taken this concept of variables in the scientific method and we've changed it. Variables still matter in social science. But what we've done is we've taken those variables and we've placed them into context, something that we call a scope. Social science understands that the environments in which a specific set of variables play may not always be the same. Likewise, different environments may use the same variables to different effect, resulting in different results. That creates a problem within the scientific method. So what we've done is we've created a set of variables that apply to specific scopes. Once those scopes are defined, we move the scope. We keep the variables the same, but we move the scope to a different place to test it. It works really well in this environment, and it's working well in this environment, although there's a few key differences. Is it going to work in general? Can it apply to this larger scope? The primary method, the primary tool that allows us to do this is the rule of generalization. The rule of generalization is simply a concept applies to B population only so far as C limitation. So let's apply this concept now. Let's talk about that notion of scopes. We're going to introduce the socio-ecological model. Now, the socio-ecological model is super, super simple. You're going to be hitting yourself in the head when you see this. It came out in 1980 by Yuri Bronfenbrenner, and essentially it holds all society can be broken down and studied in scopes. Each scope basically begins in your head and moves out to the greater world. It starts with the intrapersonal concept, who you are, what you do, what kind of attitude you have, your skills, your capacities, how you present yourself to your friends and family. After that, you have an inner community. That inner community can be repeated or is different based upon the specific organization you're a part of. Your larger organizational scope, that is the collective identity, the brand, if you will, of the different social institutions you're a part of. So you have a specific department in your university, that is an inner community of an organization. Then you have an outer community, which is the relationships that those brands and you are having with the wider world around you. Lastly, you have your public policy, which is saying these are the rules, these are the laws by which all scopes under us must interact and must communicate. In lower scopes, like an individual or a small group scope, will have profound impacts on higher up circles. So if you want to make a change, any change whatsoever, you need to understand how every change in your community is going to impact each scope involved in your community. Let's talk about a more local example. And community managers at CMX, you're going to love me for this one because this is one of the biggest arguments that you get to take to your CEO and say, ha, I was right. Branding. When the world came online, public brands were synonymous. They were, we are Nike, we are McDonald's, we are Wendy's, we are insert big brand here. As a result, the brand became an individual. You were speaking on behalf of the brand and the brand voice is unified across everyone involved. We're binning that because in a community-led world, in a world where communities are a part of and in lead of building organizations, we have to change the tone of voice and the brand voice as they get closer. So to the broad public on social, you want to represent that you're Nike or that you're Wendy's. But as a person gets closer and they start reading your blogs, they want to know who these people they're listening to are. This is Nikki at Nike. This is Cassie at Wendy's. And then as they get even closer, whenever they call up your customer service or they hop onto your forums, they want to meet the individual community manager. Hey, my name is Maria. I'm the community manager for Nike. We love to have you. Pop around, go meet other Nike lovers. We have a shoe off meetup happening in New York and Dallas, Texas every week. The way that you talk as your brand has to change depending upon the scope you are looking to target within the socio-ecological model. And with that, we're going to zoom in to the specific scopes that matter to you right now. Communication constitutes organizations theory. Probably one of my favorite theories out there. In fact, I did name my company after it. We do not produce organizational entities, governance, or communities without any form of communication already having happened. And communication constitutes organizations theory falls along a very specific projected path. It follows a specific set of steps that you can design, that can be architected into your community, that can be used in order to make conversation better, and can allow you to interface your organization's involvements with your community almost effortlessly, just by virtue of knowing how people typically talk. So what's the process? First, an idea is formed. It's highly individual, it's very small group, and this focuses specifically on the individual and small group scopes within the socio-ecological model. You mention an idea at the bar. Hey, you know what would be really great if we could do in this organization? I would really love to see this happen. And then you have a little bit of discussion with people, and then it goes to your organization. And your organization kind of sets up, and you pick 3 or 4 chief individual stakeholders who you think are going to really, really care about this topic. And you put them all in a room and you're like, hey, so we were talking and now we'd like to have a formal discussion. What do you think of this idea? And once you get that small group buy-in, that interpersonal buy-in, you make it into a formal conversation and you say, hey, this sounds like something that we'd like to do. Let's put together a proposal. Let's put together something here to actually create this. And you create some firmer rules. And this is the moment you have the first tangible artifact. You have a proposal that says a conversation has been had. The benefits may outweigh the drawbacks. Here's what it might look like. And you use that format in order to create larger discussion. And you go back and you say, here's what the need of this discussion is about. And here's what it might look like. And you start to forge stronger concepts through a breakdown of larger community into their own small groups so that you can repeat this process again, just in a formalized setting, in a formalized range. And now you have all the information necessary to truly make a decision. So you go up to the leaders and you say, here's the proposal. And then they say, well, if we're going to do this, we're going to need to do this, this, and this alongside it. We need to avoid this. And you're going to have a shared concept of what this thing is that you have now built. You do it all over again. It goes right back down to those individual interviews and that research and the small groups. And as you repeat this process, you are producing organizational value through the development of communication. So we get to our third model for social scientific foundations in online community, the wicked problems mindset. The wicked problems mindset essentially holds that there are 2 types of problems in the world. There are plain problems, which no matter how easy or how difficult they are, they have an answer. If you put enough people into a room and you give them enough time, they will come out with an answer. Once you take those individuals' answers and you bring it out into the democratic world, you bring it out into the real world, you start to discover that people have opinions, and opinions are not answerable. And this is where we encounter the second type. Wicked problems are those problems that definitionally do not have solutions because they are built on different perspectives, different cultural values, different understandings of how the world works. People will always conflict, and this is the reality of the systems that we build in social science. So how is that going to impact your local online communities? We can better understand how it might impact your communities by looking at the larger scope, looking at public policy, and looking at larger community development. Let's talk about democracy. There are inherent flaws to the democratic process. If everyone wants to make a decision, everyone's voice needs to be heard. What this tends to do is create a hierarchical factor between I am right and you are wrong. We have to reframe this discussion into the sense of here's some advantages to approaches, and here's some drawbacks to those same approaches. How can we mix and match these? How do you feel about them? In order to do that, we have to flip the model. We cannot be focusing almost entirely on logic and rationale and reason as our decision-making process. We must understand that people make responses emotionally first because you are challenging their worldview, which challenges their values, and people are more likely to rank higher the things that are risky than the things that are advantageous on a scale of what is most important to them. People are more scared of losing the status quo than they are of attaining an opportunity. We also need to understand that a vast majority of these values are intrinsically tied to the scope in which that discussion is occurring. In some cases, they may have primary concerns for their friends and family. They want to move to the United States because Honduras is too dangerous for them. On other scales, it may have something to do with their organizational level. My job has been threatened by technology and by incoming immigrants, and I need to be able to protect and care for my family. Understanding and breaking down these issues based upon the social scientific scope that issue apprises to allows you to come up with a suite of different approaches that you can mix and match and present to them, and then ask, do you think that this would be suitable? But I think that this is also really important too, because I'm currently making this video for CMX, for an entire suite of community experts. We need to understand that the more expertise we gain in something, the more of a leadership role we take, the more our blinders begin to close in. In order for us to laser focus ourselves on a goal, we have to, by definition, lose the resolution of the other people. So we have a proposed method of doing this. We're going to do this model 3 times. Once to establish the need. Why are we experiencing this problem? What is happening? And what advantages do we have? And then the plan. What are our community members' superpowers? Who is best at doing what? What approaches can we take in order to develop and understand this? And lastly, discussing practicality. We have to make a decision now. We have a suite of different plans. We've put them together into 2 or 3 specific ones. Which one seems most appealing to you? By making our decision-making process within our communities more viable in this regard, we are able to social scientifically progress our community's opinions and inform the organization's opinions as a community-led infrastructure. So let's have a quick moment of reflection now. Now that we know and now that we understand exactly how the social scientific process augments the scientific method, how are we going to make those changes in our online communities? Likewise, if we're looking at different scopes throughout our community, what actions can we perform on each scope to increase the levels of empowerment and answer the most critical question in community today? Is the social presence of our marketing or our brand harming or improving the health and well-being of the online communities that we're a part of? Are we making sure that the voices that are involved in the online community are being listened to, and we are taking a role as a resource node rather than the decision maker at the helm? As businesses, we have discovered that there is a business to having an online community involved, but that does not mean that we get to take advantage of and poison the way that communities typically are built. It is up to us as community leaders and business owners to really understand and make good on the promise of making the communities we're a part of better. Again, my name is Samantha Vania-Logan. I am the founder and CEO of Socially-constructed.online, and I am more than happy to have as many discussions as you want about implementing social scientific measurement into your online community. I do have some free 1-hour consultations if that's something that you want to do, and I will be on the ground at CMX every single minute of the day. Thank you all so much for allowing me to talk. Thank you so much, CMX, for allowing me this presentation space for us to have this discussion. And again, if you want to see this video, it is available on my YouTube channel down here. The link is in the description. Thank you all so much.